This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. When there is an ending, there was a beginning. Every victim has a picture to paint. Every true crime has its time and place. Please join our MJ podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Welcome to our MJ podcast. This is a new series called In Memory of. This will be episode 1, part 1, the 9/11 deaths and injuries and survivors. This episode will be very graphic, for I will be interviewing a survivor of the 9/11 attacks who was in one of the World Trade Center towers when the planes hit. You will get step by step of what took place and how they survived. I have known this survivor for years, and we talk on the phone every Friday night at 10 p.m., and sometimes our conversations have lasted for hours. Some could say it's a therapy session, but let me make this clear. It's not just one-sided, for I have told this person my darkest secrets and trauma that I have experienced. But mine is nothing like what this person seen on that day. No person living on U.S. soil should have seen what they did. It's an honor for me to know this person and the trust that we have in each other. We will also talk about my work at a government call center in 2006. We done surveys with 9/11 survivors in depth what they saw that day. The survey was geared to follow the survivors' health for the next 20 years. These were also people drawing 9/11 benefits. To access the person's file to do the survey, you had to use a phone number or a birth date or a social security number. There was 10 of us employees who discovered what we thought was fraud. After we reported our findings, we were put on a tracing study to track down the right person we should be interviewing. To add insult to injury, and not to be racially profiling anyone, but the truth is, all of the suspects had Middle Eastern names. Hear what the 10 government call center employees discovered. We will get our survivor's view on what she thinks about the fraud and what should they do with these type of people. Just another note. President Reagan on national TV in the 1980s pleaded with Congress and showed photos of terrorist training camps. The president pleaded we had to stop what was going on in Central America or we were going to be hit by these terrorists without them firing a shot. Well, folks, it became true, and it was also learned at that time about the cocaine cartels. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Joining me later will be a very special guest who is a survivor of the 9/11 attacks. We are coming to you from our home office in Morrisonville, New York, surrounded by the Adirondack Mountains. The September 11 attacks, referred to as 9/11, were a series of 4 coordinated terrorist attacks by a terrorist group, Al-Qaeda, against the United States on Tuesday morning of September 11, 2001. 4 California-bound commercial airliners flying out of the northeastern United States were hijacked in mid-flight by 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists. The hijackers were very well organized into 3 groups of 5 hijackers and 1 group of 4. The first plane to hit was American Airlines Flight 11 out of Logan International Airport, which was flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center complex in Lower Manhattan at 8:46 a.m. Then 17 minutes later at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 out of Logan International Airport hit the World Trade Center's South Tower. The 2 110-story towers collapsed within an hour and 42 minutes after being hit by the planes. After leading to the collapse of the World Trade Center structures, including 7 World Trade Center, and caused a lot of damage to surrounding buildings. A third flight out of Dallas International Airport, American Airlines Flight 77, was hijacked over Ohio. At 9:37 a.m., it crashed into the west side of the Pentagon in Arlington County, Virginia, which caused a partial collapse of the building's side. The fourth flight, United Airlines Flight 93 out of Newark International Airport, was flying in the direction to Washington, D.C. This plane was the only one not to hit its intended target, but instead crashing in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. The plane's passengers attempted to regain control of the aircraft away from the hijackers and diverted the flight from its intended target. Investigators determined that Flight 93's target was the White House or the Capitol building. But in my opinion, the target was the White House. In the aftermath of the attacks, all suspicions quickly fell onto Al-Qaeda. The United States formally responded by launching the War on Terror. Our nation invaded Afghanistan because the Taliban had not complied with U.S. demands to expel Al-Qaeda from Afghanistan and to extradite Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. Several countries strengthened their anti-terrorist laws and extended power to law enforcement and intelligence agencies to prevent terrorist attacks. Osama bin Laden at first denied any involvement in the 9/11 attacks, but in 2004 he formally claimed responsibility for the attacks. Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden cited U.S. support of Israel, our U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, and sanctions against Iraq as motives. Osama bin Laden evaded capture for almost 10 years, but was located in Pakistan. Osama bin Laden was killed during Operation Neptune Sphere. The attacks resulted in 2,977 deaths and over 25,000 injuries who will have long-term health issues. It remains the most deadliest terrorist attack in human history. This is a single deadliest incident for firefighters who lost 340 brave men and women. It was also the single deadliest incident for law enforcement officers who lost 72 brave men and women. Just to be fair, yes, there was a lot of different chatter collected by our intelligence agencies before 9/11, but it was impossible to figure out what the target could be. For all they knew, it could just be a suicide bomber planning an attack. Our best of the best of intelligence officers would never think in a million years that 4 of our U.S. planes would be able to attack the United States. Just like President Reagan said in the 1980s, these terrorists would hit us without firing a shot. Correct. They just used 4 airplanes. let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, our special guest, who is a 9/11 survivor, will tell their story. It's very heart-gripping. This next song is for those who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. May God be with you.
What does it look like in heaven? Is it peaceful? Is it free, like they say? Does the sun shine bright forever? Have your fears and your pain gone away? Here on earth it feels like every day good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky, and I hope you're singing in the angels' choir. I hope the angels know what they have out there. It's so nice up in heaven since you arrived. Now tell me, what do you do up in heaven? All your days filled with love and light. Is there music? Is there art and invention? Tell me, are you happy? Are you more alive? 'Cause here on earth it feels like everything good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky, and I hope you're singing in the angels' choir, and I hope the angels know what they have out there. It's so nice up in heaven since you arrived. Since you arrived.
This is Fire Alarm Dispatcher Carlos Sanchez of Fire Dispatch Operations on September 17th, 2001. Make a cassette tape from Manhattan Master Tape 423. Originally recorded on September 11th, 2001 in the County of New York, City of New York, State of New York, in conjunction with Citywide Job Number 1-44. Please stand by for a series of messages. Message 1 is a straight radio run received on channels 15 and 17. The message commences at 0800 hours, 46 minutes, and 43 seconds.
Battalion 1 to Manhattan.
Battalion 1.
We just had a plane crash into Alpha 4 of the World Trade Center, transmit a second alarm, and start relocating companies into the area.
10-4, Battalion 1.
Battalion 1 is also sending the whole consignment on this box to that area, okay? Engine 6 to Manhattan.
Engine 6.
The World Trade Center, tower number 1 is on fire. The whole outside of the building was just a huge explosion.
10-4, all companies stand by at the top.
There's been a second alarm on that box immediately.
10-4.
We Engine 1 out, World Trade Center, 1060. Send every available ambulance, everything you got to World Trade Center now.
10-4, 1060 been transmitted for the World Trade Center. 1060 for the World Trade Center.
3 truck to Manhattan.
3 truck.
Civilian reports from up here, a plane just crashed into the World Trade Center for your information.
10-4, okay.
Trucks available. Battalion 1 to Manhattan.
9-1, yes.
We have a number of floors on fire. It looked like the plane was aiming towards the building. Transmit a third alarm. We'll have the staging area at Vesey and West Street. Have the third alarm assignment go into that area. Second alarm assignment report to the building case.
All right, 10-4. Second alarm assignment, report to the World Trade Center. Second alarm assignment, report to 1 World Trade Center.
Engine 1 out of Manhattan.
Engine 1, okay.
It appears an airplane crashed into the World Trade Center.
10-4. Third alarm's been transmitted box 8087. Third alarm transmitted box 8087 for 1 World Trade Center.
Welcome back to our MJ podcast, the series in memory of the 9/11 deaths and injuries and survivors. We have on the line our very special guest who is a 9/11 survivor. Would you please introduce yourself?
It's Olivia.
And yes, folks, this is our very own MJA staff member, Olivia, and our podcast co-host. She survived the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Centers. Olivia, could you please tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I was born to Boston parents. My mom was born from Worcester, and my dad was from East Boston. His job transferred him to Manhattan, and I was born in New York. As a kid, I always had like a thing with how things worked mechanically and everything. So I used to pull things apart. I used to drive my mother crazy because I pulled the phone apart one day. I was able to put it back together. So I pursued a career in engineering. I was a physics major. My physics was my major. I was interested in that also. So I ultimately became a mechanical and electrical engineer, and I went on to pursue a law degree. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I did pass the patent bar, and I'm a patent agent. So it enables me to write patents and prosecute patents.
And is it also true that your father worked for the FBI?
Yes, in Boston, and then he was transferred to Manhattan.
Okay. And isn't it true we met online concerning missing Maura Murray, who disappeared in New Hampshire on February 9th, 2004?
Yes, that case for some reason always intrigued me. It was shortly after 9/11, and the person I was dating, he was always watching these, what was it, Information Discovery Channel or...
Discovery ID, that's where
Discovery ID and this and that. And I remember Maura, when she disappeared, there's something about her. It just struck me. You know, I knew the area because we used to vacation in New Hampshire. You know, when my dad was alive, and I remember the area where she disappeared because we had a love of the White Mountains, and I used to ski. I didn't ski in New Hampshire. I used to ski up in Stowe. And she just had this all-American girl look about her, and, you know, it just piqued my interest because I thought, you know, we could have been that girl one day because, you know, when you're at that age, you're in college, you take chances, you do stupid shit and everything, and, you know, I just started following her case, and this is where we are.
So it would be safe to say we've known each other for almost 8 years?
Yes. or
Okay.
more. It might be
Okay.
more.
And could you please tell us how your day started on September 11th, 2001?
Well, I was eager to go back into the city. I hadn't been there in a while. I mean, I was there, you know, we used to go to Little Italy and different places, but I had business to do in the city. I used to work in the towers. I was actually there when it got bombed in, I think it was 93, and after that I left, and I pursued a job, you know, in New Jersey, and the day was beautiful. It was just, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy. I was going to have lunch with friends of mine that worked in the towers. My cousin also worked there, so she was going to join us, and it didn't turn out as I thought.
And could you please tell us what your mother said to you on the day before you left?
She was very upset. She said, you know, why would you go back there? She says, after what happened, you know, my mom, she was a widow at a very young age. My father died when he was 41, and she was 41, and I was a baby. My sister had moved back to the house because she had just gotten divorced, and, you know, she looked at me, and she, oh, my God, bless his soul. She had the rosary beads in her hand, and she kissed me, and she says, I just hope I see you today. I just don't have a good feeling about this. I don't know what she was feeling. My mother wasn't psychic, but it's that mother's instinct, I guess, you know, or she was just afraid, you know, because, you know, the bombing was bad, but nothing like this. Nothing like this. It's just something that no one should ever have to. What I saw that day, I don't know if people that are on the front line in the Army would ever see anything like that. It's just indescribable. It was just horrendous. And it's something that will be with me till the day I die, unfortunately. I mean, I'm fine now. I can deal with it. I can shut it off, but it happened, and you still have your moments.
And the friends that you were supposed to meet for lunch, they all perished that day. Is that correct?
Yeah, they did. They did, and their remains were never found, so they were basically pulverized. They were at the point of the building where the plane went in.
And okay, you're at the World Trade Center concerning some business. What tower were you in, and what floor were you on?
I was in the North Tower, which is One World Trade, and I was in the upper 80s.
Okay, Olivia, tell us what happened next.
All right, so the listeners are clear. Where I was considered that day the critical zone, because I was only a few floors below where the plane went in. I went in, took the elevator to the 78th floor, which is the sky lobby. And what that does is it takes you to the upper floors. It takes you from the 78th floor up until Windows on the World, which I believe was on the 110th floor. So, you know, I went in for my meeting, and, you know, everything was going good. It seemed fine. I still had it on my mind about lunch that day, and I didn't mention this before when I was taking the train in, because you have to take the train in. I was looking at the towers, and it was nothing my mom said, but I was just, they wanted to eat on at Windows on the World. I had been there before. I've been there on dates. You know, I've eaten there. It's a beautiful place to go, but just something that day, when I saw those towers, I said, no, something don't feel right. But back to the meeting I was in. It was going well. And I looked out the window, and I just caught something out of the corner of my eye, and I said, You know, that's a plane around the Hudson. Plane. It's a no-fly zone. It's a little close, you know. And I thought, well, maybe he went off course or what. So within a matter of, I want to say minutes, seconds, not even minutes, I look out, and it's 3 to 4 miles out. I could see this plane. And it's coming quick, and it almost barely missed the Empire State Building. And something in my mind said, get up and stand in the doorway. So she says, you know, she's looking at me. She says, what's wrong? I said, there's a plane coming towards the building. It's headed right here. And she was just, she just said, oh, it's a commuter jet. You know, I said, no. And then you could hear the roar of the engines, and it just, I could see the American Airlines insignia. I could see movement images in a cockpit, and it just went up. And then there was the bang. She got knocked off her chair. I was in a doorway. The building, within a matter of 6 minutes, 6 seconds, I'd say, it just moved to the right. Then it moved to the left. But during that time, there was a change in the air pressure. And it felt like there was a column of air that came shooting into the office. The papers that were on her desk just were floating in the air. And then all the doors in her, like, within the office where I was, not the outside doors, were just slamming shut. And then the building just steadied itself. But it didn't feel right. And you could see there was a fireball came down when the plane hit. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm saying to myself, you know, what is that dark? You see papers coming down. And then you look again, and it's people coming out of the building. They were jumping. And it was just surreal. It was in slow motion. They didn't look stressed. They just looked calm. Some of them were holding hands, and I remember her saying, she says, we got to get out of here. Now, there was a door that, what I learned later was the stairwells. There were 3. It was A, B, C. A and B were completely destroyed, so C was the only way out. The door to get into that stairwell would not open. It was jammed shut. The smoke in the office was getting worse. People were coughing. People were crying, trying not to panic. So we moved to another office that was on the floor. You could move around within the offices, but you couldn't get out.
Are you there? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay, all right. And
so,
yeah,
they're
go
trying
ahead.
to get the door open, and it wouldn't open. It wouldn't budge. So we found another office on the floor that wasn't as smoke-filled, and we were in there. I believe it was a law firm of some sort. And other parts of the floor, you could see the ceiling tiles were starting to come down, and there were spotty fires in different areas. So apparently we were in the building when the second plane hit. We didn't even know it because we weren't on the side of the building where you would face the South Tower, if you can understand it.
Right.
So we didn't know what was going on over there. We were just concerned about getting out. So after a while, we heard banging on the other side of the door, and somebody saying, is anybody in there? And, the person that was trying to get the door open was yelling and said yes. So what they had to do was they had to chop through the sheetrock that was outside the door, and they were able to get it to the point where we could get the door open and we could get through, and we started our walk down the steps. It wasn't a panic mode anybody was in. People were very calm and just slowly going down the steps because we felt we were out of those offices, we were on our way down, we were going to get out of that building no matter what. So we got to a certain point where it stopped. Everybody stopped, and it was offices that were on the floors below us. They were emptying out, and somebody was holding the door open, and there was just a tremendous amount of people. They just kept coming out. But and you're looking at the guy, and he's looking at us, and at that point, what do? You slam the door shut on these people? No, because at that point, everybody was helping each other. Nobody cared what color you were or anything. You know, there were people that were injured that needed help. People were helping each other. The stairs were very narrow. They were filled with smoke, but it wasn't unbearable. There was a stench of jet fuel, and burning. That was kind of sickening. But we managed to get through. We get down to a certain point where it was just so backed up it was stopped. So we decided to get off on the 78th floor, which is the sky lobby, which was a mistake because we thought we would cut through and get through to another set of stairs that would lead us down. We're going through, and it was pitch black. The elevator doors were completely ripped off. Sky lobby is an area where you could actually see all of Manhattan. That's where all the elevators are and everything. The walls were blown open. The ceiling was open. And then I noticed this cable that was spinning around. Meanwhile, we're walking in ankle-deep water. And the thing was on fire, and I'm saying to myself, if that ever hits the ground, we're fried. But we managed to get through. It was pitch black. We were holding on to each other, and we managed to get through. We got to the 11th floor, and we heard this tremendous rumble, and everything was shaking. The tiles were coming down from the ceiling, and then all this black smoke and this white soot just came up through the stairs. At that point, we didn't know what happened. In my mind, I thought something was going on with the building I was in. It was starting to come down, or what, and then it stopped. So at this point, we continued down, but in a faster pace. We finally got to the lobby level, walked outside, and I looked to my right, and I saw that the second tower wasn't there. And I remember seeing a firefighter, and I'm looking around, and I'm saying, this isn't what I'm seeing. Because there was just bodies all over the place. And I remember looking at him, and he had just this blank stare. And he just said, "Jumpers, keep moving." And, I started walking. They were directing us towards the waterfront because you get the ferries across into New Jersey. And I think the worst, I remember seeing half a torso. I remember seeing an arm, a piece of a leg that was on fire with material around it. It must have been somebody's suit. The worst sight I came upon was someone who must have jumped. Her insides were completely coming out of her. Her clothes were ripped apart. She was missing a leg. The face was almost unrecognizable, and you just look at it and you say, "What am I looking at?" And I just continued on.
Yeah, and can you please tell me when you first saw a person on fire?
Yeah. Oh, give me a minute.
Okay.
She apparently was on the floor below us, and she was by the elevator banks when the plane hit, and she had no clothes. Her hair was gone. She was, God, her skin was just melting off of her. She did survive. The people that she worked with helped her get down. They were ahead of us. But she did, I know she did survive. You know,
Okay.
she had several surgeries. She was in the hospital for a while, but I know there's stories of people that, nurses, one in fact, that said somebody actually melted in front of her. I could see that happening. I don't know what temperature jet fuel burns at, but the smell was disgusting. When I got outside, you know, they say it was that night. No, that smell was already there because those firefighters, I heard the chirping of their, I guess it was their emergency packs, and they were, I learned later on that was an alert that goes off that they're buried, and they were underneath the second tower, the south tower. But the smell, it just gets in the back of your throat, and to this day, when it gets kind of damp around here,
Yeah.
that smell comes back. And my ex-boyfriend that I was with at the time, and I was telling him about it because he was in law enforcement, and he says, no, he says, Olivia, you know, he says, once you smell death, he says, you're never going to forget it. And it's just, to explain it to people that are listening to this, I could describe it as pork burning on a grill, but 10 times sweeter, to the point where it gets in the back of your throat and you just gag. It's just a toxic smell. And I guess that was combined with the plastics and whatever else was in that building, because I remember when I went back to work, it wasn't the next day, obviously, but it was the day after, I passed on the road I take to where I worked at that point. You could see where the towers were, and the sky was like it was almost like a pea green. So God knows what was in that building, and I'm sure it's all the toxins that are killing people that are dying these days, the first responders or the recovery people.
Right. And also, as you're coming down the stairwell, firemen was going up to approach
Yes,
the problem.
They were. I remember seeing one and looking into his face, but I heard later on that he made it out, you know, because when the second tower, this is what I heard afterwards, when the second tower collapsed, they told all the firefighters to get out of there. I think most of them died in the second tower. Don't quote me on that, because I'm sure some died in the first tower. But,
Yeah, a total of 340 firefighters.
Yeah.
And a total of 72 police officers died on that day.
Actually,
Yeah.
somebody from the town, he worked in the Port Authority, one of the towns around here, he lost his life there.
And you was telling me about the two men that was helping you get down the stairwell.
Yeah.
That after they got you people out, they went back up and they also perished. Is that correct?
Yes, they. From what I heard, you know, they're heroes to me. They saved my life. They saved all our lives that were trapped. They were very calm. very methodical. They worked for the Port Authority. I now know their names. I think the furthest they got was the 91st floor. They couldn't get any further because that was those floors were destroyed. That's where the plane went in. I think above that. The last place they were seen was the 78th floor because one of their colleagues was stuck in an elevator. I think it was the 78th floor, and they were able to get him out, but they found him, the guy they helped out of the elevator, and he lost his life too. They found him in the mall that was below the lobby. I don't think the two guys that helped us, their remains were never found.
And did you also, was you also in the cloud that pursued, that had people running in the streets, the dark cloud?
Yes. Because when I came out, like I said to you before, they said go towards the waterfront, and I looked up to see what I came out of, and I just see this gaping hole, and I could see the whole top of the building was just, they were straight up and down, but the top looked like it was off, the bottom part.
Right.
It was set off. And I said to myself, this building's coming down. Because at that point, the whole, I want to say from where I was to the top, or even lower than where I was just all black smoke. And I said no. And, they said that the plane, the reason the door wouldn't open to the stairwell was because when the plane hit, it just twisted the building. And you could see that from pictures. It doesn't look like it's straight. It looks like it's twisted a little.
Yeah.
But I was, took a long time to get out of there. I think they said it was almost 2,000 steps we took. But you know what? Nobody was counting. You don't count. You're tired, you're hot, you're sweaty, you can't breathe. I had a suit on, and I happened to have a scarf around. That's what they did in those days. I had a scarf, silk scarf, and I put it around my mouth just so I was able to breathe. But I wasn't too far gone, and I heard this glass cracking, and then this god-awful popping noise, and I thought it was an explosion, and I looked, and then you could just see the whole tower. The antenna was starting to come down, and I said, that's it, and then we ran, and you had to run because it was coming towards you, and we all just ducked into a building that was open, a building door. I don't know if it was an apartment or what, but it was a building, and the door was open. We just went in there and waited till it all settled. But you got hit with it anyway. There was no way escaping it because it was so furious. And it hurt. It hurt. It was... glass and other matter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Because whatever was left in there was just pulverized, and that was just mixed in with the glass, and the ash was just so... When I came out, I was just... I'm not I don't watch many movies. I'm a fan of the silver screen, and I watch the old ones, and I remember with my ex-boyfriend, he used to like watching the old war movies. And when I came out, I looked and I said, it looks like somebody just dropped a bomb on Manhattan.
Yeah.
It was just thick ash everywhere, and people were just walking around like a zombie. And, it was just, people will say, well, you came down 2,000 floors, how can you... Well, your adrenaline is so high because it's your will to live.
Yeah.
You made it out, I'm not going to die from the debris that's coming from these buildings, you know. So everybody just kind of ducked into whatever was open, albeit a restaurant or whatever, you know, just to get inside and wait till it passed.
Okay.
Continue on.
Okay. On that day, the first plane hit at 8:46 a.m.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to get home?
I got home at around 11:30, a little after that, maybe.
And tell us what happened when you got home.
Well, I walked to Manhattan, Midtown, because it was just so backed up. You know, the waterfront is right there. And it was just so backed up with the people and everything. There was just so many people. I had taken this route when it got bombed. I had walked to Midtown. I knew the city well. And I took the ferry across to, I think it was Hoboken. And from there, I took the train down to the, you know, you had to take 2 trains, and I took them down to where I lived. But there were people on the train that were in the same situation as I, and it was just, I guess we were in shock. Nobody was talking. We're looking at each other, and then we're on the train, and we're getting close to our stop. And I remember this one woman, and she says, you know what? She says, we're all fucking hot messes. She says, none of us want to look in a mirror. I said, the last thing I want to do is look in a mirror. I said, because you know what? This is what I said to I just saw too much death today. I don't want to see what I look like. What concerned me more is the people that had no choice, and they chose to jump. Yeah. You know, I was just something with the mirror. I just didn't want to see what I looked like. I knew I had blood on me, and it wasn't mine because I wasn't cut. I guess it was from whatever was flying in that debris. A lot of people had blood on them, you know. So I get to the train station, and I get off. My car's there, and a couple other cars around me. And I want to bring this up because this is important. There was somebody there that was worked for the trains, and he says, let me call you a cab. I said, no. I said, I'm not getting in my car. I'm not getting into somebody else's car. I don't know what's on me. And he says, ma'am, he says, you got to go look at yourself in the mirror. The bathroom's there. He says, you got to, you know, look at yourself. And I said, I don't want to look at myself. I said, I just want to get home. And he says, okay. And he says, where's home? And I said, it's the next town. I said, it's a 15-minute walk. I said, he says, you just came down how many steps and you're going to walk? I said, I can do it, you know. So I start walking. I see people in the neighborhood. People weren't sleeping. You know, I mean, I remember looking up. One thing I remember looking up that day, I never saw so many stars in the sky. And I remember telling my ex-boyfriend, I said, those were all the people that died. Looking down on us, you know. That's how I thought that time. So I start walking, and people are looking at me, but they're not giving me a weird look because they kind of figured where I was coming from. And a cruiser pulls up, and he goes, ma'am, get in the car. And I said, just let me walk home. I said, I was in the towers. I said, I need to be, he says, no, ma'am. He says, you need to get into the back of the car. He says, we're going to take you home. He says, I think you walked enough tonight. And that was the first time I rode in a police car. And he took me home, and I got home, and my mom's there on the back porch with the black leaf bag. And she says, you're not coming in this house? I said, make sure you shut that light off on the porch, on this back stoop. And her and my sister are there. And she says, yeah, it's off. Just get in the bag and get disrobed. Don't you know, as soon as I get all my clothes off, well, she didn't turn the light off. The sensor hit. She hit the sensor and all. So I was standing there naked, but I didn't care. I didn't care. All I wanted to do was get into a shower, and got into the shower. I had a lot of glass in my hair. I had, give me a minute.
Okay.
I had, I guess it was pieces of people on me, on my face. I think that's what they were talking about. There was matter on me that I couldn't describe. It was just bloody chunks. And I just remember taking the longest shower ever, getting the glass out of my hair, and then my mother coming in with the Clorox, flushing down the, I don't want this in the system, you don't know where you were. But we left the clothes. They tied the bag tightly, and, the guy I was dating, he worked for the township, and he told us how to dispose of them, and that's what happened. I didn't go to work the next day, but I did. He took me, this is the creepy part, he took me to pick up my car, because it was at the train station, and I remember going, I said, all these cars, next to me, they're still there, and I remember talking to somebody at the train station. I said, those cars next to me, I said, they're still here? And he says, yeah, they didn't make it home.
Wow.
So they died. That was the day. And I had a difficult time dealing with it. My cousin, fortunately, I found out, she worked very high up. Her colleagues all died that day, so I'm not going to say the name of the company. Fortunately for her, she had to go down to one of the lower floors, and she escaped. But my friends, they all lost their lives, and nothing was ever found, so they were pulverized. And when I say pulverized, it's there's nothing left.
Oh.
Maybe they were on me. For all I know, I don't know. I think we all had like a piece of them on me, on us.
Okay, I believe this is a good time to take a pause for the cause, and we will return in a moment with more conversations with 9/11 survivor Olivia. Be back in a moment.
I've been searching in the dark, trusting every clue I found, but the truth has not been told. There's every corner of these woods is hollow. I can't see in the dark.
Welcome back to our MJ podcast, this series in memory of the 9/11 deaths and injuries and survivors. Now let's talk about the government call center where I worked, who done the World Trade Center's health survey in 2006 with the survivors. It was an hour survey, and some of the questions were very intense. The interviewers had to ask the questions, and we had the New York City's 9/11 on speed dial for people who had bad reactions to the survey, which there were many. So we had to be interviews, a therapist, and a dispatch for 9/11. It was very intense. Okay, one day I enter a phone number to open up this person's file. 22 names popped up on this one phone number. One day, I'm entering this person's birth date. It took him 4 tries to get it right so his file would open. One day, I'm entering this person's social security number to open their file. It took him 3 tries to give me the right number. I went to my supervisor, and come to find out, I wasn't the only caller having these issues. There were 10 of us. Remember, these survivors were collecting 9/11 benefits. We were put on a tracing study to track these people down with the info that they had provided to collect the 9/11 benefits. We discovered fraud and hundreds were caught. Once again, we are not trying to racially profile anyone, but most of the ones that got caught were from the Middle East. One of them was a wealthy businesswoman who collected $2.7 million for a loss of a grandchild, which there was no grandchild. She falsified documents. Not only did these type of people kill our Americans, but they collected 9/11 benefits after the fact. Olivia, what do you think should happen to people like that?
I think they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. It wasn't only Muslims that were doing this. I remember watching a TV show about someone. She claimed she was like you and I. She was an American, and she claimed she lost someone in the towers, but her stories weren't matching up, and they found out that she was lying. But there's a lot of these cases, and I want to touch on something. I believe the people that worked in the towers, the first responders, the rescue people, the people that were in the recovery efforts, they deserve this money. If something had happened to me, don't come from a family that sue easily. And I remember my mom saying, if something happened to you, I would not claim benefits. I had insurance. Financially, everything would have been covered with no problem. But, sometimes people, it's sick to say, but they, they live on people's misery. They prey on people's misery
Right.
to benefit themselves financially, and that's fucking sick. That's fucking sick. These people went to work that day just to feed their family or do whatever. I heard a lot of stories where some people, I don't know who they were, maybe they're the conspiracy theory people, and yes, assholes. It was an American Airlines plane because I saw it. It wasn't a military plane. I just don't get who would do that. I mean, who would do that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And as we've discussed before on missing person cases and things like that, that people interject themselves into the investigation and they cause so much harm that some of the
call
stuff.
them the keyboard people.
Yeah, yeah. I call them trolls,
Keyboard
and
trolls.
yeah, and most of it's nothing but white noise. It doesn't help locate the
white
person. Yeah, and
what I was saying before is I heard a lot of stories where there were certain people, I don't know who they were, but they said, well, they deserve to die. They weren't all rich, okay? They weren't all bond traders. They weren't all in finance. I know for a fact that someone in the North Tower that lost their life was a tenant of someone I know. She could barely make ends meet. And she died. And I remember him saying, she's not answering the calls. She's not answering the calls, and her family got back to him and said she died in the towers. And it was sad because I remember, he says, "Can you come into the apartment?" I said, "I really don't want to go into her apartment." Because he had to rent it, and she had stuff set out that day. She was, I guess it was, oh my God. She was going to make a birthday cake for her daughter. It was her daughter's birthday, I think, that day, and she just never made it home.
Yeah.
These are real stories, people. I mean, there were people that worked in Windows on the World. They weren't rich. They weren't rich.
Yeah,
they were waiters. They just worked. It was a great place to work in. It was a fun environment. I've had people ask me since this happened, and I'm going off course here, would you ever go into a skyscraper again? I know a lot of people that say, well, yeah, I would go into one just to prove it. What are you proving? You proved your point already. You survived. I went twice. I was in those towers, and I got out. Third time, I don't think I'd be so lucky. I do have a problem with heights since that day. I don't like being up high. I will never get into a skyscraper. But, to prove a point, what point are you going to prove? You survived.
Yeah.
You beat their odds. They didn't kill you. They didn't kill you. Why, tempt? I don't know. And I got off course, but I'm sorry. But I think
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I have a lot to say. Believe me.
Okay, after 20 years later, do you have any hate towards the hijackers or Osama bin Laden, even though they are dead?
Not now, no. Like I said before, I don't know if I mentioned it before, I'm Catholic. So I spoke to my priest a lot because I was having problems dealing with things because of what I saw. Like I said before, it's something that no one should ever have to see in their life. To me, death should be a private thing. The pictures that were taken of these people and put on the internet, I mean, if you like to look at gore, that's fine, but they chose to die that way. It should have been respected, and it should have been kept off the camera. All right, those of us that were there, we saw it. We had no choice. We had to walk past them. We had to get out of there. But it's totally disrespectful. It's disrespectful to their families because I don't think their families want to see this over and over and over again. They just, if I knew one of my loved ones jumped, I don't want to see what they end up. Most of them were just gelled masses. It's like taking a tomato and smashing it against the wall. It depended on where you hit. This woman, I don't know what she hit because she was still, you could distinguish it was a female from her face. Her face was bloodied, but you could tell it was a female. She wasn't as bad as the rest of them. A lot of them were just, it was just a mass of blood. That's all that's left. I mean, from what I heard from people that saw them fall, they said it wasn't quick. It wasn't fast enough to cause them a heart attack. They were alive until they hit the pavement. So this was their choice. This was their peaceful choice, and it should have been private. But it wasn't. Yeah. But bin Laden, me and my priest had many talks about him. I said what should be done with him, and this was in the beginning, get one of those buckets that they use when they cut trees down, and don't put him in face first. Just put his feet in and pull him out, and just slowly put him in, and just slowly, and let him feel what it's like to be pulverized. And then, you know what, now, when I think about it, and I'm in a straight state of mind, whatever God he believes in, there's one God, and he's got to face him. And that motherfucker, I'd like to be in on that conference because it wasn't too good, I'm sure.
And do you think bin Laden should have been buried in the United States so people could spit and piss on his grave?
No, they have no business on this earth. They did enough damage. No. I don't think people would want to, no. There was just too much grief at that time. No, to bring him here, he has no place here. No.
Okay. And Olivia, do you have anything you would like to add?
Oh, I got a lot I want to add.
Well, go right ahead.
To you two fucking college idiots that were screaming and yelling, and you were in an apartment far away from the towers and acting like it was all about you. But you kept the camera running while the people were jumping out of the tower. You're sick. If that's your way to claim your 50 minutes of fame, you're fucking sick. That should have been posted. It shouldn't have been put on YouTube, and it's on YouTube. I think they took it down now, but and just the utter disrespect. I mean, I understand people want to know what we saw. I keep that to myself. I know a lot of my colleagues, I don't tell them I was there because the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, what did the jumpers look like? Why would you ask that? Why would you even ask that? I have two idiots in work that went to the museum and put on Facebook, oh, how peaceful it was. They were sitting there reading a book. Well, I ripped them a new asshole. It's not a peaceful place because there's still body parts behind that wall. I haven't been there. I will get there. I'm better now. I'm in a better place. I feel I need to get to those fountains. I need to see my friends' names, and I think that'll be complete closure. As far as them, they were the best people ever. They would give you the shirt off their back. They were hard workers. They did not deserve to die, nor did anybody else in that building. But as I look at things now, they're in a better place now. And I just want to end this with a quote that I found. It's by Sandy Dahl, who was the wife of one of the pilots on Flight 93. And I quote her, "If we learn nothing else from this tragedy, we learn that life is short and there is no time for hate." I think we need to listen to those words, especially now. Stop hating each other. Stop judging people by the color of their skin and learn to get along, because that day everybody forgot who they were and they helped one another. And I think we got to look back on that, because the way things stand today, who knows if there's not going to be another 9/11. And that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And God, one more thing.
Yes.
To my friends, God. You know, the times we spent together are precious. They're always in my heart. I'll never forget you guys. I just hope it was quick and you didn't suffer, because you didn't deserve that. You're in a better place now. And we'll meet again. I just miss you guys so much. And it hurts still. It hurts. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened to any of those people. They were good people, all of them. They just went to work that day. They didn't deserve this shit. That's it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Listen, people, these terrorists are cowards killing innocent people. Let's face it, suicide bombers have to be completely insane or brainwashed to blow themselves up. I have a quote for you all. You gotta dance like there's nobody watching. Love like you'll never be hurt. Sing like there's nobody listening. and live like it's heaven on earth. William W. Perky. I want to thank our viewers and listeners for tuning in tonight, for you all have been so kind. A very special thanks to Olivia for telling her story of survival from the 9/11 attacks on September 11th, 2001. To all the people affected by the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center's complex, you are still in our thoughts and prayers. You will never be forgotten. Always remember, folks, if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. That's the end of our MJ podcast, the series in memory of. This was episode 1, part 1, the 9/11 deaths and injuries and survivors. We say to all of you, good night from Morrisonville, New York.